and Xfinity.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Intel X3 Masters Season 11 live from Oakland, and coming here from the Xfinity Analyst Desk. I am Evie supporter, and we are going to embark on 2 days of fantastic League of Legends action. And I'm not going to do that alone. I have my trusty sidekicks, actually deserve more praise than that. Turning to my left with Alberto Crumser and Hifo, then Christopher Papa Smith, as well as Indiana Frasker in black. It has been a while that we got to do something, a little bit of downtime after Worlds, but cool to be here and have another IEM event with a lot of teams that have a lot to prove.
Absolutely. IEM has been my first event ever, 2012 IEM Hanover, and coming back here and being a part of this event is just so thrilling on the other side of the desk.
And 3 years later, we finally have an Oceanic team, the Chiefs, back at an international event, and that actually leads us to an interesting point. The first time in a long time, more Oceanic pro players than Oceanic casters. Fun place to be.
Fantastic.
It had to happen eventually, Papa Smithy, but
It's been a long wait.
yeah, you can't keep me away from competitive League of Legends, so super excited and very stoked to be here in Oakland.
And you're also the biggest fan of the Chiefs, and you want them to do well, so you'll be there.
We got Chiefs side over here.
Yeah,
Two
definitely.
of us, Chiefs rep.
Well, let's take a look at the tournament structure and what is at stake here. Most importantly, the winner of the tournament gets a good chunk of prize money, but also qualifies for the Intel X3 Masters in Katowice. And how do they have to do that? Well, it's a single elimination bracket. Quarterfinals today, followed by 2 semifinals, and then a best of 5 final. And TSM and the Flash Wolves, will see them tomorrow. They're seeded into the semifinals based on their summer split performance and their world's records. But to come back to that, the Intel X3 Masters Katowice, regardless of the teams that ended up here and that will be fighting for that trophy, that is always something that a lot of teams aspire to, a great event, that World Championship.
Well, it's quite prestigious. I mean, these are the best teams in the world coming to play in the mini worlds almost in the IEM Katowice, where these guys are the top of the level. They're competing for big prize pool, and winning here is definitely something that you want to do, looking forward to next year and competing in that one.
And just look at 2016, you know, the same team won IEM World Championship, MSI, and World, so it shows you that...
Which team was it?
That was SK Telecom T1, yeah. We will not forget. The hype train doesn't start here, but
It's
they
still
are.
going, it's still going.
That's fair.
And it's not just SKT, you know, you're joining the likes of, you know, Moscow 5, TSM, SKT. There's a lot of prestigious names on that list, so if you can engrave your name there in history, it's worth something.
Yeah, definitely, and the trophy that they're fighting for actually has all the 63 previous Intel Extreme Masters events engraved upon them, and then of course this next one, so we'll see who gets to lift that. That's that for us for a brief intro, but it's not all us holding down the fort. There's a whole crew here, so let's meet the rest of them.
Thank you very much, Shocks. I'm, of course, Daniel Stephen Dracos, joined by Aiden, Zyrene Moon. We're going to be the casters bringing you this first best of 3. How you feeling, man?
I'm feeling great, and you know, I don't actually mind being your sidekick on this. You know, I'd let you be the Batman.
I'm happy to be that. I prefer Nightwing, but I mean, you take whatever you want.
Say that's why I picked Robin, because eventually I take over. Anyway, I'm really excited for you and INTZ to kick it off, because these wildcard teams like INTZ, you know, they showed at Worlds they could take down EDG. I want to see what else they're able to do.
I'm excited to see how they stack up against Unicorns Love, of course, from Europe. Have to see how they're going to perform, but it's not just the casters, it's not just the Xfinity Analyst Desk, it's also a few more friends standing by on stage.
Well, we got Seth Achilleos King here, who's coming in from Korea, originally from New Jersey, the best coast. But we also, this is his first Intel Extreme Masters competition. In addition to that, his first International League of Legends competition. Welcome, and how does it feel to be on the international stage?
It feels great. It's great to be back here in America. Of course, we have TSM representing NA at this event. Always great to see those guys. We'll see how they manage with Wild Turtle back on the roster. I personally am excited, but I'm also excited for the rest of the teams that we have here. We have INTZ yet again, Unicorns of Love all the way from Europe, Longju from Korea, the Chiefs from Australia. It's going to be a great event. I'm looking forward to these next 2 days.
That's right. Well, guys, welcome, and let's kick it off to you guys again.
Thank you so much for that. And this, of course, your esteemed colleague. Are you happy that he's here, that you get to do an event with him here?
Great that he gets the chance, you know, to break out of Korea, start coming overseas. We have a Korean team here as well, Longju Gaming, but for once, you probably have to struggle to make them favorites for this event. There's other teams like TSM.
Usually when we say that, they sweep the whole thing.
That's
so.
a fair point, but I mean, as long as you have the lineup, but the results certainly haven't gone there for long.
We'll see, and let's take a look at the other teams that they go up against by taking a look at the bracket. As mentioned already, the first match, the best of 3, will be INTZ taking on the Unicorns of Love, and they will go on to face Team Solomid tomorrow. And then the Chiefs versus Longzhu Gaming is the other best of 3 that we'll have today, our other quarterfinal. If we take a look at the schedule, this is how that plays out. Today we have a maximum of 7 games, 2 best of 3 starting with that INTZ versus UL match, and then the collegiate matchup of Stanford versus UC Berkeley, the show match in there, and then followed by the Chiefs versus Longzhu. And then tomorrow we'll see, of course, the fan favorites TSM and Flash Wolves taking to the stage as well. Is it fair to say, if we take a look at all these teams, that none of the teams attending here have reached their potential or the goals they might have set for themselves in 2016, and thus this is a good chance for them to make up for some of that?
I mean, you just look at the way it shakes out. We have 6 teams here. The highest finish of any of these teams at Worlds, of the 2 that made it through, is going to be the 3 that made it through, is the group stage, right? So none of these teams, TSM especially, predicted to go to semifinals, struggled there. There's question marks about rosters, there's question marks about feelings. And that's kind of the great thing about a tournament like this, is that we will have one team that defies expectations, that answers the questions that we levy against them, and succeeds. Right now, even in the off season, one team can kind of have that feel-good moment for 2016 that they didn't really manage to put together in earlier tournaments.
And what I love about it also is not only that we have like this collective unit of teams across the board at different holistic levels, some of the elite teams like the Flash Wolves, like TSM, as well as Unicorns of Love, and then 2 wildcard representatives coming in, but also the fact that we are on 6.21. I know everyone's a little bit disappointed it's not 6.22, but a lot of these teams have competitive experience, a lot of these teams qualified on this patch, so it should help elevate the competitive integrity, at least of the competition that we'll get in these best of 3s.
Nice buzzword.
Yeah, and it also carries on from the meta from Worlds. What we saw there is just a little bit more refined now because towards the end of the World stage, we really did see these teams figure out what was the best pick, what the best strategies were, and right now we're going to see those strategies kind of be mirrored by the guys here and try to level themselves to that amount of play, which I think is going to be really thrilling because we're not going to rely so much on picks determining the matches as opposed to the play itself.
And yeah, and it is very exciting, the fact that everything's unlocked now. Like York can be played. Don't know if we'll see him, but it's possible.
He died, came back, and nobody cares about York.
That's the big one for me, though, is Ivern's now live. We saw him a little bit played at the IEM qualifier in Paris coming into this patch. Unicorns of Love here, they're super innovative, so I really hope that a team does look towards more tank-oriented junglers as opposed to just the staple carries like the Nidalee, like the Lee Sin, like the Olaf.
Yeah, and a team like the Unicorns of Love have also historically pulled up so interesting things in the Bay Area IEMs, of course, most famously in that TSM matchup 2 years ago. We'll see if they can get there again.
I mean, 6 patches since the Unicorns of Love last played. They're good at kind of homebrewing something the TF jungle a couple of years ago no one will forget. Who's to say they don't have something out of the box, not even like the Ivern, that can come in? And just for this tournament, it does feel kind of like a love letter to the 2016 season. It's the last international event that's going to be played on those 2016 meta patches. So we're going to see the best of that last end of what has been a great competitive year.
Well, you're such a magician with words. A love letter to the 2016.
They have an advantage in that, as you mentioned, they haven't played in 6 patches. Nobody knows what these guys played. They played at the European playoffs, and every other team has actually had a lot of recent competition, whereas these guys, they just arrived. You just look at their solo queue account, so anybody that has preparation towards them is going to be looking nowhere because they're only going to have the first match against INTZ, and even then, that match will not be enough to determine how deep their champion pools are, their strategy that they have developed. So it's quite intriguing for anybody playing against them because they have to approach it with a more all-around composition.
Yeah, when talking to INTZ, they also said, well, the Unicorns of Love have so much to watch when it comes to us. They have the challenger in the Paris Challenger, rather, the qualification tournament for here, as well as all the games they played at the World Championship in the group stage. And I want to turn my attention somewhat towards those wildcard teams, maybe starting with INTZ. They had that big upset win over EDG, but nothing really came of that when the momentum was good for them. Where did they falter, and how do you see them getting further in this tournament?
I mean, it really was a Cinderella story, but then the clock struck midnight, and we came back to reality. They didn't exit the group stage. A lot of that was on Revolta. On the world stage, he defined himself. He can be that big superstar, explosive jungler, but in his most recent performance and qualifying INTZ into this tournament, his pathing was a little bit suspect. So the question for me is, what type of Revolta is going to show up? Is he going to be that pumpkin, or is he going to be the carriage?
And I can't help but wonder that the amount of pressure that INTZ received after winning that first game, immediately the spotlight spotlight turned onto them, a team that didn't really expect that. Even within Brazil themselves, the expectations weren't really there. Beating such a powerhouse like EDG really make things harder for them, because now everyone's expecting them, can this team make it out of groups? What can they learn from this? And they weren't able to show up. And I think that now we can really tell how much can a wildcard team learn from Worlds. We always hit on that. How much can they improve from playing with this incredible competition? And I think that because they have been practicing so hard and because they recognize that the amount of spotlight is on them, all the games that everyone can watch, they will play better than what we saw and will be a really good team here.
I mean, you talk about that narrative around wildcard teams, and they were almost like a dirty word at one point, because those expectations were low for analysts. They were like, oh, you know, we have to watch the wildcards. They're just making up the numbers, not going to pick up a win. You have to reframe afterwards. Albus Nox made it to quarters. There was that big win over EDG. Now, when we were listening to the research and when we were kind of prepping for INTZ at Worlds, people talked about this team has strong macro. And you're like, okay, this team has strong macro for the Brazilian region. Unfortunately, there is kind of that stereotypical thought process there. But you look at the lineups, especially against EDG, and you're like, okay, but they're against all these superstars. There's no way they can make it work. Both Albus Nox and INTZ shattered expectations like that. They showed that on a patch in the standard lane meta, they are a good enough team. If they get the start, especially if they get Yang ahead, INTZ can take games off of these LCS region teams.
And you started to set up a context for it a little bit by, alluding to the patch, alluding to the circumstances that led to that. But we also have to remember that while I don't want to take away what the wildcard region started at Worlds, upsetting teams like ROX, like G2, when it did come time towards the best of 3, I mean, reality kind of went back into check, and H2K put it into gear and put down Albus Nox Luna pretty quickly. And this is a best of 3 tournament. This is single limb. That means that you can't overlook any opponent. It would be very punishing to overlook a wildcard region, especially because, yes, they can take those games off. The question for me, can they take a series?
I mean, you have to mention, this is a small point. A lot of these teams, I mean, especially you look at a team like Longzhu, they only just qualified or were cemented for this event a week ago. So the amount of prep you can put in, there are teams that are going to look past opponents. Longzhu especially are going to be prepping for the semifinals. They're going to be like, well, we're from the LCK. Surely we can look past a team like the Chiefs. The Chiefs do have a legit shot, given that they've been preparing for weeks for this tournament. The preparation level for the wildcard teams has in many ways exceeded that of the other teams at the event.
I would be disappointed if Longzhu is coming in with the attitude of looking past a team like the Chiefs. Even though their track record isn't there, the fact that they've been struggling so much within Korea itself, and you don't want to have that amount of disappointment when you come in and you actually don't perform against a wildcard team like the Chiefs that hasn't had international competition.
It's an old story though, Crumbs. It does happen.
It is an old story, and most certainly happens, but it happens with the teams that are really at the top of the table. It doesn't really happen to the guys that come in underdogs. Like, for example, we saw Ever before in the previous IEM.
Sure.
And while they didn't overlook anybody, the synergy just wasn't there. And if we expect poor play out of Longzhu, I would think it would be reminiscent of what happened to Ever.
But let's dial in a bit more on the Chiefs. As you said, this is a very important chance for them. They haven't been on the international stage for a long time, since 2012. They want to prove something. They were a bit known as chokers when it comes to those international competitions. But now they boot camped in China, in Shanghai, before their challenger, before their qualifier for coming here to Oakland. We've heard good things about them, even though they lost the final, or the first final of the winners bracket, and INTZ bested them. There's a lot of hopeful signs there, and this should be a chance that they have to take.
Okay, I got this one. I'm gonna step in.
OPL caster over here, okay.
The OPL representative, got my koala crew there. So the Chiefs, big fish, little pond. It's always been their story. The OPL has only been around for 4 splits. The Chiefs have won every single title. So for your North American fans, they're effectively the TSM or the Cloud9 of the OPL. They're the big dogs. It comes to international competition, fall short every single time. They have made it to the finals multiple times to never make it to wildcard or Worlds. And so now it's just kind of, can they step up? This is the first time that they've actually finally qualified, and they don't need to necessarily win IEM. They just need to make the Oceanic players proud.
I mean, the cool story about the Chiefs, a team that I actually know very well on a personal level, having come from the Oceanic scene, is the fact that 3 of these players have been playing together on the same competitive roster through a couple of organizations since 2013 September. So the top side of the map, Swiper, Swiffer, and Spooks have been playing together for over 3 years. Consider that some of these lineups were put together in the last week. Wild Turtle only joining 4, 5, 6 days of scrims, 3 years of preparation, 3 years of disappointment, and this is kind of the vindication for them to at least show, like, even if they lose 2-0, if those are competitive games, that's a step up, because previously they haven't even made it to the stage.
Well, not a whole lot of teams have that incredible amount of synergy that goes over the years, and I think that one of the ones that we have here is actually in the Flash rules. It's a lineup that, while changed right now, still has components that has been around for that amount of time that really shows that incredible synergy that can topple a lot of teams that don't have that. So if they're capable of using that top side of the map to their advantage and really focusing on that, because we have seen the top side of the map be quite effective with the meta of the bottom lane favoring more utility-centric AD carries, it will be quite likely for them to find a window of opportunity towards Longzhu in their throwing tendencies and win the game.
I mean, Casa Maple Sorta, that's the names we always talk about.
Yep.
They've been on the roster a long time by League of Legends standards, but that's only 2015, January, when Casa joined. That just gives that context. 3 years for 3 players to stay together. It's pretty insane.
Ultimately, though, like the fact that they still have their core, especially in this meta, which is so influential around the mid and the jungle, as well as, like Crohn's was saying, the bottom side of the map. I mean, you can pretty much plug and play anyone as long as the synergy and that standard bar of play is met. As long as you have that core, you're going to be still relevant in this meta on 6.21.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. The teams are still setting up on stage, so we have a bit of time left to talk about the other storylines in the tournament, and of course, most importantly, you touched on it already, TSM is here, of course, the team, the Bay Life team.
The team that's always at every event.
I was waiting for a little reaction, but
That's the fun thing about TSM. Whatever the event, whether they qualified or not, TSM is always there through the crowd. I even hear it in some Chinese games. That chant goes everywhere. They may not be playing today, but I have a feeling their name is going to be sung plenty.
yeah, we talked about the teams that we'll see tomorrow. Is it pretty much TSM win? Is this their tournament to win, or what will have to go right for them?
Well, they're definitely coming in as favorites, but you have to remember that Doublelift was a big shot caller for the team. And in Worlds, where Doublelift was unable, or one of their shot callers from Bjergsen was unable to fulfill the role of shot calling, the team kind of collapsed. So if you're taking away one of the main shot callers from this team, they're most likely going to be struggling. I'm sure that the entire team will work around him and try to fill in the gaps that are missing for the team and make sure that they're a ship that is not sinking. But hopefully, I think that this team will be able to give up a performance that they would be proud of if it was Worlds in their disappointing run, but it's not going to be at the same caliber that we expect them in the synergy that they have developed over the last year.
But that's the key thing, Crumbs. You said Bjergsen was sick. And while I definitely believe that Doublelift, very vocal player, probably has a big part in the team, it was when Bjergsen was sick, when he couldn't talk, that the team really collapsed, and he is their primary shot caller. So I am very curious, like you said, bring up those questions. What kind of dynamic do they show with Wild Turtle? The team does have experience with him, not necessarily that iteration of the team fully, but I think that they're still pretty confident. The question for me is, how much preparation do they have coming into this? How late did they get the sub? How much advancement did they look towards this tournament?
And that's why I'm hesitant to use a word like favorite for any team, but specifically TSM. So little preparation with Wild Turtle. Wild Turtle to Doublelift is a really big change. So I'm hesitant that you got a team like Unicorns that, okay, didn't make it to Worlds, but of course came so close, one game away in that series against Splice. And they have a settled roster. There seems to be rumor and innuendo they're going to keep that roster together for next year. So with all that comfort, they're the one team, apart from the wildcard teams, that have had that extra time to prep for this tournament. So do they come in favorites? To me, slightly over TSM, but TSM, if they have a big performance in their first series...
Slightly over TSM.
Yeah, absolutely. Not necessarily in the 1v1, but in terms of taking the tournament, I actually give the value to comfort, to preparation, over just the hype players. Like Bjergsen, probably the best player at this tournament, but will TSM win? That's what I'm not sure about.
So your UOL win, possibly, and also love to know, by the way, what you guys at home think. You could just tweet at us using that hashtag IEM and weighing in on anything we have to say if you agree or disagree, which might be the case as well. Froskering, on that topic of TSM, how far do you see them going, and do you share the sentiment that UOL is an even bigger favorite in this tournament?
Well, they're definitely going as far as the semifinals, at least.
Yes.
Bold prediction.
I know, right? For me, I actually did favor UOL a little bit, just because, again, we haven't seen them in so long. They've got so much more preparation. They're retaining their same roster and their talent, and again, it's Unicorns of Love. Like, the element of surprise already puts them ahead. But for me, it's also kind of a stylistic matchup. The fact that they are on TSM's side of the bracket, they're very scrappy, very aggressive, very keen to fight teams, and I feel like that's almost was TSM's downfall at Worlds, the fact that they were flanked in a group with RNG as well as Samsung Galaxy, two teams that also wanted to take the 5v5, the 3v3s, and why TSM are good at that, sometimes in this type of meta, it can come to that 50-50 coin flip, and if it falls the wrong way, I mean, that's the game.
I mean, TSM have the emotional storyline. Wild Turtle back in the team, the old AD carry. They sidestepped at Worlds. It makes sense in the narrative that TSM TSM win this tournament, right? Everyone goes home happy, home team wins. But, I was there at Madison Square Garden, SKT versus Rox. I was like, all right, this is the time for Rox. They're finally going to be unshackled. Nope, lost to SKT. So the emotional storylines, unfortunately, they stay in the creative narrative sometimes. So it'd be great if TSM took it. The semifinal, if it is that TSM versus Unicorns of Love tomorrow, I think could be a really fiery one.
That would be explosive. We've started by talking a bit about the tournament. We'll catch up on those storylines later. But for now, it is time to get IEM Oakland started.
For the third time in a row, the Intel Extreme Masters return to the Bay Area. After 2 amazing events in San Jose with fantastic matches and a great crowd, it's time to move on to a new location. In the heart of California, only a stone's throw away from San Francisco and the Golden Gate Bridge, is the city of Oakland. Oakland, also known as Bump City or the sunny side of the Bay, is considered the 3rd largest city in the San Francisco Bay Area with over 390,000 population. Close to the Martin Luther King Jr. regional shoreline overlooking San Leonardo Bay, you can find the Oracle Arena, where this year's Intel Extreme Masters takes place. It's one of the most prestigious sport venues in the US, and the Intel Extreme Masters are the first esports tournament ever to take place there. At the home of the Golden State Warriors, the world's best gamers will fight for the IEM Oakland Championship.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 11th season of the Intel Extreme Masters League of Legends quarterfinals here at the Oakland Oracle Arena. Welcome, guys. If you guys can cheer for that, that's okay. Come on. There we go. This weekend, we have 6 teams from all over the globe. We've got wild cards, we've got complete roster shuffles, and we have all-stars with us this weekend, which means we have no idea what's going to happen, but it's going to be really exciting. And are you guys excited? Yeah, I am too. So let's kick it off for this entertaining weekend. Let's start it off with your first team, CB, LOL, Summer Split Champions, INTZ.
INTZ, the roster unchanged, and what we know from their upset win over EDG and then their run through the group stage at World Championship and most recently in the qualifier. They've also been scrimming a lot back in the CB LoL, so we'll see what they can do. And as said, the lineup is still unchanged for them, which should help them and give them an edge in this tournament.
Well, their coach is different.
Exactly.
Players you want to watch, though, if you're new to the INTZ roster, is going to be Yang and Revolta. So it's going to be Yang in the top lane, Revolta in the jungle, Talkers in the mid lane, Macau as your AD carry, and Joxer in that support position.
Yeah, as you was mentioning, there has been a bit of a shuffle for them in the coach position, so we'll see if that affects them whatsoever. From their performance in the qualifier, it seemed like more of the same of INTZ. We'll see if some of the changes here that they've been able to go through with their coach helps them. How much of an up do you give them over the Unicorns of Love?
That's the question. I mean, to me, there was slight adjustments, specifically around the duo lane, maybe playing around the 2v2 a little bit more, a little bit less roaming. But as you said, mostly same story for INTZ at Worlds.
Yeah, we always think about Yang and Revolta.
I just don't think that the entire lineup of INTZ will match up individually against UOL.
Would have said the same thing against EDG, though.
I mean, that said,
But the draft.
the meta does favor them, the fact that they play utility in the AD carry as well as control mage in that mid lane position.
Yeah, well, let's take a look at their opponents as well.
And coming up, our opponents today, the EULCS team, Unicorns of Love.
And there they are, the Unicorns of Love. The roster unchanged from the EULCS's last summer split, where they got 6th place, they got into the playoffs, and then they narrowly lost to Splice. Didn't make it to Worlds, which is a huge goal for them. So we'll see what they can bring here. The roster assets: Visit Chachi in the top lane, Move in the jungle, Exile in the mid lane, and the bottom lane, Veritas and Hylissang. Chachi and Hylissang are the core of that team that have been there from the very start and keep that team together.
And towards the end of the split, Exile really stepped up. As a mid laner, he has been towards the top of the EULCS, just doing so much work that I'm really excited for what he can pull off, because with all these control mages, you can really see somebody completely dominate a game.
They're scrappy, they're aggressive, they play fast, they play forward. Unicorns of Love have always been kind of their own worst nightmare, you know, their individual decision-making that puts them down. But when you think someone's going to step back, Unicorns of Love always step forward.
And the memes have always been strong with this team. Their name's the Unicorns of Love. That starts the story there. And the Chaos style back in spring of last year. But the consistency has to be talked about as well. This team has always made playoffs ever since they joined the LCS. And by the end of the last split, they looked practiced, they looked strong. They were a game away from Worlds. The Unicorns, they've got the funny name, but I think they're actually here to play, and I think they could be really strong at this tournament.
Fantastic name in that. And then you mentioned it, they have always been consistent in getting to the playoffs, but throughout the year and throughout looking at their performance, they have never really found a consistent form, to put it that way. But there are hopeful signs in there. As you mentioned, Exile, who started from being kind of a rogue and a Yasuo one-trick into being a seasoned mid laner that could take on the wealth of mid lane talent that is still in EU. So we'll see where the attention should lie from the side of INTZ. What lane do you want to get going, and what lane do you want to shut down?
I think probably the biggest mismatch is going to be in that mid lane, like you said, the fact that it's Talkers versus Exile. Now, again, the meta does hide Talkers a little bit because he is a control mage player, so he can just, you know, grab something wave clear. But if Exile really wants to turn it on and contest him, there is a big wink point for INTZ there, and it is the most pivotal point of the map. So if they lose that early, Unicorns of Love can roam around and rampage anywhere they want.
And I really expect Ryze to be a very powerful pick here, especially for Exile. If he can get his hands on that, he can easily abandon mid lane. If Talkers chooses to kind of recede and succumb to the laning phase, he can just roam around and affect the map, and we have seen how effective this pick can be.
I mean, he debuted the new Ryze, right? Yeah. That's the thing. He brought it in. His ult use, I think, was the most impressive. Took it at level 6 back when people weren't taking it till later. Made the roam plays from the mid lane. But it's risky to look at Exile as the guy to carry, because remember, he was a rookie in Summer Splits, his first international event. You have to wonder, even though he shapes up well, it was the comfort by the end of the season of staying there, playing under the lights in Europe. Now it's a different story here in Oakland.
Yeah, great point. He managed to not die as much solo as he did throughout the season by the end of it. And I did talk to their coach Sheepy a bit, and he says that Exile is just super excited to be in America here, playing his first international tournament. And it's interesting to me when we look at the dynamic of the two teams, INTZ, Yang, Revolta, that is what has to get going. And traditionally what we've seen this season is Move and Exile. If they together didn't manage to pop off in Snowball for the rest of the match, it usually didn't go that well for the Unicorns of Love.
It's also kind of where their damage and where their gold is allocated across the roster. If you look at Unicorns of Love, they're very standard. You know, they can carry from the top lane, they can carry from that mid lane, they can carry from the AD carry. Like, everyone's going to step up and do their jobs. Whereas INTZ, you said it, Shox, it's Yang and it's Revolta, so they can really only carry or hard carry from 2 positions, and Talkers and Macau are more of that utility secondary support.
And what's unfortunate for them is that we've seen how easy it is to neutralize carries in the top side. You ban the Jace and then you just pick a tank. You go with the Poppy, you go with the Echo, and you just wait it out. You take a CS deficit and you don't give up the turret very early, and you're able to easily transition out of the laning phase, make sure that your top laner isn't punished as heavily. And I think that Vizicachi, you know, he's a really solid mid laner that will definitely not die to any cheese gangs in the top side. So he'll probably, if he's focused, just give up a little bit of CS.
Rumor has it that he is playing out of his mind in the practice coming into this tournament, so that Yang Vizicachi matchup just solo should be amazing to watch.
But that's the thing, is they really need Yang to have the advantage over the top laner, and Vizicachi, you know, although the Unicorns of Love have been consistent in terms of results, they have not been consistent in terms of roster outside of Chachi and, of course, Hylissang. And it's going to be Chachi looking good by the end of the season, very good 1v1 solo laner. That's definitely not a point of weakness for Unicorns of Love.
No, we'll see how they come out of the gates, because both teams really realized when talking to them in preparation, saying, well, we only have this one shot, this one best of 3. And if you start out by losing that first game, you can see what happens. And I think that a team like INTZ will probably want to put it all on the line for game 1. Having their experience in the group stage of Worlds, where they did exactly that and got off to a great start. So we'll see what the choices are that they go towards in picks and bans. We are about to get in the lobby and see that. Of course, this is 6.21. The last patch that we saw the Unicorns of Love on was, help me here,
6.15
when they played the qualifier for Worlds and narrowly made it, but we'll see what they take their priority to.
And so they played on the standard lane, so at least that's out. That cat's out of the bag. I think it suited them again, specifically in the Worlds qualifiers. Looked so strong, so close to making it to Worlds.
I could have been them, really.
Yeah, it is true, and not a lot has changed in 3 patches. I think we have to say there's small things. Aurelion Sol toned down a little bit. Some of the powerful picks from Worlds toned down a little bit.
Move's got to mean Nunu, although that changed.
Are we going to see it though, Crumbs?
I sure hope so.
I don't think we're going to see it on 6.22 onwards. So this is kind of the patch for international Nunu play.
But this is the thing, though. Every time we talk to Unicorns of Love backstage, we're like, do you have any picks planned? And all they do is they cheekily smile and like scurry off. So
they already showed Twisted Fate Jungle at this tournament 2 years ago. So
and here we are going to get into picks and bans for match 1 at the Intel Extreme Masters. INTZ on the blue side quickly coming out with that Karma ban, very quickly Syndra ban from the side of INTZ rather, and the Jace ban on the table.
Super standard so far. You don't want these mid laners to be at the hands of anybody. Really difficult to counter the Syndra Rise. Makes sense.
What about the jungle pool, though? That's kind of my question just before you come in, Frosker, and is what about the things like the Nidalee that has been once again targeted? You know, you talk to junglers and they still say it's still the same Nidalee, but at some point the accumulation of those nerfs, patch after patch, have to hold down the Nidalee.
So on 6.21, Nidalee did see some nerfs where across the board her cooldowns were all hit. She was still very heavily prioritized in the Kespa Cup as well as Demacia Cup, but I feel like it really just solidifies Olaf in particular as kind of that staple.
We do have a small issue with the graphic that should get turned out. There we go. Now it's showing correctly. The Unicorns of Love decided to ban out Karma, Jason, Kennen, and INTZ has answered with Syndra and Rise. Just to clear that up.
Yes, of course. You do not want Exile to have these 2 picks that are quite important. And the Kennen and Jace just makes sense, because if you're going to try to snowball topside, you want to get rid of the carries.
This is my problem with banning from topside, though, is that there's so many champions that are viable right now. You think about the Poppy, the Jace, the Kennen. Yes, 2 of those are bans, but you can also fall back towards the Gnar if you really want to, or even Trundle's starting to rise up. So I feel like no matter how much you take away from top, you're still going to get something that you want.
And this is pretty insane. No jungle bans. We just had a Worlds where we saw 4 or 5 jungle bans. Not a lot has changed in the jungle meta. Maybe the Nidalee toned down, but there's a lot of power on the board here for both teams. And that Nidalee, it could be a first pick. We saw it in that SKT, sorry, in the Rocks versus Kongdu Monster Kespa Cup final. Nidalee can still be very powerful.
Yeah, I think we'd like to see a pick from the Tahm Kench is a bit surprising as the first rotation.
And this is Unicorns of Love, so not 100% that's going to be a support Tahm Kench.
Technically a flex. We did see the theory of the teleport Tahm Kench also spreading havoc over the whole map, so maybe that's something they want to go towards. We will see, and we'll see what INTZ answers with.
Well, it just makes sense. You're most likely going to see Tahm Kench be run with either Ashe or the Jhin. Most likely not with the Caitlyn, and now that the Jhin will most likely taken away from INTZ, it just leaves Ashe for TK.
So what this is kind of following on from your point, but the one thing that first pick Tahm Kench does is now INTZ are like, oh, we can't can't take the Ashe because it's such a great denial to single target initiation like the Ashe arrow. So if that gets you a very high pressure, a very high priority AD carry because of a support pick, it's pretty cool on the side of Unicorns of Love.
And the jungle pick coming out for INTZ for Revolta is Olaf, a champion that he has favored a lot, and he seems to always pick up when he's able to.
Olaf does everything that you want from a jungler right now. He's super fast, very quick through the jungle due to his AoE clear with his axe. He's got true damage there, so if he has the red buff, he can duel pretty much anything. He's got great non-committal CC as well as ability to check brushes and to scout to place deep vision. He's all about control, he's all about fighting.
I mean, the axe is the only thing non-committal about Olaf, though. After that, and that's kind of the risk, is if you don't get ahead as Olaf, if it goes to the late game, Olaf does fall off pretty sheerly. So INTZ still going to be focusing on the early game.
Especially with the Ezreal. Ezreal taking as a response to the Olaf. You know you can lane safely against Jhin when you have Tahm Kench to protect you, but Olaf will just never have the opportunity to actually get onto the Ezreal, and as the game will progress in later stages, UOL will have a field day.
But my big concern, if that Tahm Kench does go down into the support position, is that that Ezreal Tahm Kench is pretty much a trading exclusively lane. If you ever lose the shove, you're going to spend the entire time under your tower, which Ezreal's fine with that. He can farm from far away from Mystic Shot, but that's Unicorns of Love, if they fall behind on the trade, pretty much succeeding their entire bottom side of the map and not getting control until Ezreal hits his power spike.
That's why Unicorns of Love, it's time to lock in the Zyra. Look for the 2v2 arms race that was the big story at Worlds, looking for as much power in the 2v2 to the point where Misfortune support came a thing. Now, again, we don't know for certain this will be a support Tahm Kench, especially with a team like the Unicorns of Love, but it seems like INTZ might be pivoting and going away from that.
And now the
Zyra.
comps start to make some sense. You have Braum and Jhin, really strong lane for setup in ganks, especially when you have the Olaf, an auto attacker jungler that can really proc that. And when you have Orianna as your control mid lane, you just have a comp that is super solid in the mid and later stages of the game. The early game, not that powerful, but if they drag this on, it looks good.
It's also a great pick for Braum here alone, just because he's not against a feasible range support, although as they hover the Soraka, it's a bit more questionable. But again, if it's Tahm Kench, he can safely go into that. He will empower his jungler to come down and gank, so we expect Revolta to spend a lot of time down there if he wants to make use of the Braum. But Jhin has enough pushing power alone to still dominate that lane.
Yeah, I would have expected to see something like a Nami to just have complete domination in the bottom
That's
side.
kind of my question. You usually see the Braum when you need it, when it's necessitated by something like the Ashe arrow. So going for the Braum this early, sure, there's a world where it makes sense in the gank, but Braum, because of his weakness in the 2v2 in most lane matchups against anything other than the Tahm Kench, although it looks like it will be the Tahm Kench. They thought about flexing it, but
no,
Tahm
we'll go
Kench.
into the support role, and the Unicorns of Love, they finish up their comp with a Victor in the mid lane, also a control mage from the side of Exile, and Poppy for Vizichachi in the top lane, expected.
Yeah, exactly. You have no chance of really getting camped at this point. Once you hit level 6, it's nearly impossible for you to get dove. The only way would be if you run a Trundle, but taking a Trundle in this situation just will not make sense because you're dealing with just such an amount of getting away from Trundle with the Ezreal kiting, with the Victor Rylai's. Trundle just will most likely not work. So maybe a Gnar would be a better pick here.
And Gnar's definitely one that Yang has looked strong on as well, so it could be the Gnar. The Trundle would kind of move away from the rest of the team comp, which is more about the team fighting. So there is that option, but then you kind of split the identity of your team. And if it doesn't really serve either identity well, then it can potentially be to the detriment. So they're going to give to the last second. We're expecting one or two picks. And wow. Now this is another pick that does really well against the Poppy. We saw it much more in spring, but there was a lot of this Gangplank, because Gangplank has a very comfortable laning matchup against the Poppy, you know, ranged versus melee, at least when it's coming to the parlay. And he can actually have solo kill pressure on a Poppy early, just because it's very punishing to walk into the barrels and take that trait damage.
But now we've also created very distinct power points on opposite sides of the map. You know, the fact that Unicorns of Love, they kind of threw away their bottom lane. They have someone who will scale up, but otherwise they're not going to have the push unless they win the level 1 trade. So it's all about the top side of the map, whereas INTZ on the other side can play towards that top side, can play towards that bottom side because they have the Cannon Barrage post 6.
So I actually think that early on, this is not quite that bad for the Unicorns in the bottom side with the Tahm Kench. Just as Tahm Kench will usually bully around a lot of the
as
melees.
long as they position correctly on level 1.
Yes.
It feels like they got lucky, though, because when you go for the Tahm Kench and you actually solidify as support, those range supports really make your life hell. It ended up being the Braum that wasn't really being cried out for in terms of blocking those big initiations like the Ashe arrow. And now it's melee versus melee where Tahm Kench pretty comfortable, honestly.
Well, it just looks like probably good scouting here with the first ban being Karma and the first pick Tahm Kench, tempting INTZ to take the Nami. And even though Nami will have a great laning phase into Tahm Kench, the ability to teleport behind her and really gank her is quite dangerous post-laning.
Yeah, as we look at that strong points of Young versus Revolta, we'll see how that Young versus Visichachi rather, or versus each other. Maybe they tilt each other.
That's a bad sign. If it's Young versus Revolta, that's bad time for INTZ.
Before we have the two team comps, and we are going to check in with our casters and get into game one.
Thank you very much, Shocks. Zareen, are you ready?
I've been ready for like the past 20 minutes. I'm ready to get into this game.
Of course, really interesting pick ban. The Des talked about it a lot. I think it's surprising to see INTZ get so many of their comfort picks here, but we have to assume that Unicorns of Love have something special cooked up strategy-wise.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like anything kind of out of left field here. The Gangplank is the weirdest thing that I would see in this draft because you would expect a Trundle to counter-pick the Poppy in the top lane or go with something else. But the Gangplank is a little bit strange, but it is a good champion for Yang. He is very good on it. But the question mark here is INTZ in the international wildcard qualifiers for Oakland. They had 100% pick ban on Jhin, Braum, and Karma, and they gave both the Braum, or both the
Jhin, Olaf,
Jhin, Olaf, and Karma. Thank you. I saw the Braum walk into the bush, but still, Jhin and Olaf both go over. You have to see that happening, and then you have to worry about Zyra, which I thought was going to get picked here instead of the Braum, but INTZ, I think they actually got a little bit of the better part of the draft here with more damage, good wave control, good tank front line, and UOL, they're going to have to rely a lot on Exile here and Veritas to make it to that late game.
And additionally, Move, of course, a big question mark for the team. Notoriously, as we are going to move into a brief pause here, ladies and gentlemen, kind of an inconsistent player. He has sometimes these great games, very interesting pathing, but, you know, in the best of 5 that they played against Splyce, wasn't always on point. Of course, that was a very long time ago. Gragas could still cask people. That was still a thing for him.
Yeah, that's always been a question for me coming into this because what does Move play? Because he was a Nidalee, Gragas, Rek'Sai, Elise player, and Lee Sin, he played it back when he was on Gravity. He played it a little bit in the EU LCS as well, but it hasn't always been his strongest suit because he's not an aggressive Lee Sin player. He's a vision-centric player, which actually makes it so that UOL is one of the best teams at clearing out enemy vision in the entirety of the EU LCS. So on this Lee Sin, he's going to look to control vision, but how is that really going to help his team if they don't have a good setup in these lanes, which look to scale? Because like you leave a Gangplank lane alone, you leave an Orianna lane alone, a Jhin lane, you're going to get a little bit outscaled there.
And of course, we look at it, Poppy and Gangplank, of course, going to be able to trade blows back and forth in the early game, but Ezreal Tahm Kench, that is not an aggressive setup. Ezreal going back to buy that tier early, puts him behind right off the bat, and I mean, it feels like a pretty rough start. What do you think Unicorns of Love are banking on here in the early game?
In the early game, they probably have to have Move affect these lanes. Hylissang will have to kind of abuse Tahm Kench's melee matchup into the Braum and use that Grasp of the Undying and try to get some favorable trades. But why did they even pick Tahm Kench here? They have to have something up their sleeves, and Hylissang, we'll see what happens when he gets level 6 in the Abyssal Voyage, but usually you pick it when you have a hyper carry like a Jinx or a Vayne or somebody that you really want to keep safe from these dives. They probably predicted the Olaf coming out, so they picked it to keep whoever Olaf is on safe, but they picked the Ezreal, who's self-sufficient anyway. So the Tahm Kench is a little bit redundant there, but it's just extra safety for the Ezreal. So they'll have to protect him, but he'll get a tier most likely. It's going to be a weak early game here for the Unicorns, and that's what they have to make it through.
And that's where I think the big mismatch for me and the big question mark is you talk about having a weak early game, and Move, of course, we talked about it, wants to ward, wants to place those wards down. That's going to be really hard if his lanes are falling behind just based on the matchups that they've picked, not even speaking about individual player skill.
And that's the big problem here, because Move, I mean, he's very inconsistent, like you said.
We got to know.
Yeah.
Want to see. Unicorns of Love, of course, keeping their roster together. Has to be some confidence in there. Spoke to Sheepy before the tournament, I believe both of us did. He has a lot of confidence in this roster, really thinks it's coming together well, and you know, high praise for all of his players on an individual level. So I'm hoping that we're going to see a new look for Unicorns, you know, an even higher level performance than we saw in that final round of the Gauntlet.
Yeah, and of course, that went to 5 games against Splyce. Unicorns of Love were literally 1 game away from attending Worlds as the 3rd seed from Europe. It was so close. They weren't able to clutch it in the end, so they've been kind of biding their time, sitting on their hands for a good while here, and you know, they really wanted to taste the international competition. They get it here, but they want to advance. They have to take down INTZ, who were looking like a really good team for the first few days there. But there was a little bit of keyboard input lag, apparently, is what I'm being told here. But game has been unpaused to test it a little bit. We might just be right back in.
Looks like we may get the chance to do so, and we will be back in the game, of course. For those of you just joining us, Game 1 between Unicorns of Love and INTZ. Winner of this best of 3 will move on to face Team Solo Mid tomorrow. A lot of pressure on both of these teams and a lot of question marks. But will soon have answered. Nothing crazy on the level 1. Everyone headed to their respective lane. Lee Sin starting on the top side and Olaf on the bot.
Only thing different here is that they actually put a ward into the red buff of Revolta. So they'll find out which side he starts on. They don't see him cross it at all at this time, which would you expect the Olaf to go by. So he did a blue side start, bottom lane leash, and now they know that that's going to be Olaf going towards the top side. We'll see if Move actually goes for an invade. Don't know if he's going to clear this side out and then try to go after the Olaf. It's very risky, though.
Of course, already bot lane pretty charged. Both teams looking for the fast level 2, although matching up even across the board. And interesting in the jungle, too, Lee Sin taking the early blue buff. At Worlds, we saw a lot of junglers donating their first blue over for that Lee Sin and Rek'Sai, but Move looking for the extra experience there. A little bit more sustain as he continues is clear, but very passive so far in the game.
Yeah, reason he ended up starting on the top side is because he wanted to give his Krugs over to Veritas and Hylissang. So if you want a leash, you start on the top side still, so he has to start there. But he would have gone from Gromp to Wolves to red, but he ends up clearing that whole side. So he's just going for a full clear here.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're wondering, we just really want you to look at our faces.
What they don't even show us.
We'll get there.
We have to make the pause just long enough. There we go.
Of course, we will be getting back into game shortly. Have a few things to sort out here and want to make sure that everyone's comfortable, everyone's ready on stage. Keyboard input lag, definitely not something you want to play with on a competitive stage whatsoever. Now, looking at the matchups, individual skill. Of course, one big thing that we talk about whenever we see international wildcard teams is how are they going to stack up on an individual level, because while we can talk about the macro game, while we can talk about how the team comps are going to scale, it's not going to matter if individuals are going to get outplayed. So in your opinion, is there any really big mismatches between these lanes?
The only thing that I would say is the bottom lane is one that was really weak for INTZ at Worlds, but when I was watching the international qualifiers for IEM Oakland, Macau got the most attention I had ever seen him get in the past. What ended up happening is Yang started using his TP, and this is why the Gangplank is also in play here for the global to affect the bottom lane. They're giving more resources to Macau. Revolta will gank top lane, usually his second or first gank, and then they immediately try to spill that over to the bottom side. Talkers has been playing things like the Aurelion Soul and Ryze and Syndra, and every time he's roaming to the bottom side, he's not going up towards Yang. They're actively avoiding Yang and trying to go elsewhere to put more people where their weak spot is, which is where Macau is. And Jockster, he used to roam. He had a ridiculous jungle proximity where the support would team up with the jungler and he'd roam around the map with Revolta. But Jockster now just sits in lane with Macau. They're really trying to keep this guy safe, and that's the adaptation I saw because they weren't doing that before, and it did work out for them, and that's how they even got here.
Well, one of the big things that I love too is even if they didn't give him attention in those qualifiers, on that Jhin, he was consistently playing a more utility role, using the ultimates, using the ability to snare targets at any moment. I mean, the guy is Deadeye, never misses those snares in the tight situation, and sets up so many picks for the team. So even if he isn't the center of attention this time around, he still has so much utility available on that Jhin pick.
Yeah, that's why it's such a good pick for him, because even if he does get behind, he still has something to do for the team. He has a way to help them out, and we're back in the game here. But that's what I want to see, is what happens with this global ultimate from the Gangplank, the Cannon Barrage, the teleport. How much attention are they going to give Macau? Because that seemed to be a winning formula for them. And I know that after Worlds, their coach of Axial stepped down from the roster. They're now using their analyst from before as their coach. And this guy, in charge of picks and bans, in charge of the strategy now, and maybe they have shifted that a little bit to cover for Macau to help him out as opposed to what they were doing before. And it may just be a different look for INTZ strategically.
And of course now, as the junglers start to complete their first clears, we have to wonder where the attention is going to go. Revolta set up on the top side, Move is set up on the bottom, and right now Talkers is taking control of the mid lane, has the level advantage, is doing a decent job of poking Exile out, but definitely falling a little bit behind in the mana department. And I think honestly, we look at this game, this is a game about level 6. We got the Lee Sin ult, we've got the Olaf ult, we have so many initiation tools, so many potential global options here that it feels to me like this will be a little bit slower paced game, at least for the first couple minutes here.
Yeah, I think INTZ, they want to scale. You have a Gangplank, you have an Orianna and a Jhin. There really aren't too many plays that you can make, but both junglers went for invades here, and they're both going to take each other's Gromp away and actually ward up on the other side of the blue. Don't know if there will be any dives coming through here. Just looks like Move is going to back, maybe pick up his jungle item for some wards and try to ward hop around and get a little bit more here. Revolta actually, because his wolves came up, he's expecting those wolves to come up by that time, but he went from blue to his wolves, so he did it a little faster, and now as he walks away, they come up.
Ping's coming out, of course, going to have vision to see Move in the jungle. But more interestingly, Veritas and Hylissang doing a good job of taking control of the bottom lane right now. A decent CS advantage for them. Macau and Jockstar on the back foot. We talked about this as a potential weak point now. Minor CS difference, not the end of the world, but not necessarily a great sign.
Yeah, they're also playing defensively because what just happened is Revolta was on the top side of the jungle. It's like, Romp is here. There's no way that Move is on this side of the jungle. I checked everything. Move has to be on the bottom side of the jungle somewhere. So Jockster and Macau were actively giving up that lane a little bit to make sure that they don't get ganked.
Macau looking really comfortable there on the trades. Jockster with an excellent Unbreakable to block any damage back. But now, pressure shifting in the favor of INTZ. He's going to make up a decent amount of that CS, but definitely a relatively calm early game thus far. Ezreal no tier yet, so he's just fine taking these trades. Continuing forward, level 5s. Closing in on level 6. We got to wonder where that Gangplank ult attention is going to go, where the Lee Sin and Olaf are going to show up for their first ganks.
Yeah, and right now it's just getting vision. Move, ran into the jungle, put down a pink ward, put down a ward by the Raptors of INTZ, but they saw him go there, so immediately Jockster runs in, puts a ward down on the Krugs, making sure that he'll be able to keep track of it, and now they know that he might be on the bottom side soon, so Revolta is here.
Revolta, of course, spotting out Move, does have a pink ward in the jungle as well. And INTZ very active in placing down this early vision to track Move. We don't normally consider Move a giant threat here.
They have inside track too.
Fight. We're going to help him with the wall. Yeah, he does have the snare. Hilly ready to block.
And you see Jockster position himself in the tri-brush, so Revolta, there's no way he gets wrapped around on. Mid lane Talkers ended up pushing as well. And this might just be a little bit of a dive here because Ezreal Veritas, he had to back for the tier.
Nice proc there. On the Keystone, Vizichachi in trouble. Yang, is he going to be able to get the solo kill moving forward? Flash over the wall.
Yep, Yang used his to chase originally, so Vizichachi gets away, no teleport available, and because everything's happening on the bottom side, Gangplank gets to take advantage of the matchup.
Move flitting with Disaster here. That was a bad choice. 2 stacks in the concussive blows. Hylissang here ready to fight. Macau looking for the snare. Hylissang in trouble. Veritas trying to come into the fight and acquired taste.
Oh boy, they might go on him with 3 people here, but they have to back off because 3 stacks on Revolta.
Oh. Big skirmish going in. Gotta see who's going to take it. Looks like both sides are going to back off. And while we're approaching solo kills on the top side of the map, bot lane just wants to fight at every possible moment.
Yeah, it's going to be quite good, though, for Macau. He gets to back with a higher amount of gold than what was backed with for Veritas. So he gets to pick up the serrated Dirk, as well as boots and some potions.
A good place to be. You can see the CS differentials slightly in favor of the Unicorns outside of the top lane, but INTZ making some very proactive moves in the early game, taking control of the bottom side of the map. Unicorns Love cannot feel too safe in that bottom side jungle. You can see it is absolutely lit up, and we're only 7 minutes into the game.
Yeah, everybody's just trying to get ward control here. INTZ have been doing a great job of putting it on the appropriate side of the jungle, and this is just prepping them for possibly taking advantage of that bottom side of the jungle. Not a lot of summoner spells were actually used. No flashes came out there on the bottom side. It was just Revolta using the Ghost, and they couldn't get much more for that.
Move going into the jungle, not level 6 quite yet, however.
Yeah, I think he'll get it off this.
Should be all right here. No invade coming in. Does time it pretty well with Revolta's back. And of course, Exile, no blue buff available to him, and Talkers is going to feel pretty comfortable clearing out the waves, but is falling behind in CS pretty rapidly. 10 CS lead, 7 minutes in.
And immediately, right there, you see Exile clears out the mid-wave, Move, goes towards the top side. There's no flash on Yang, so he's going to have to back up.
Oh, 3-man dive coming in on the top side. Move looking to get a little frisky. Yang locked up under the tower. They're going to chain into the wall. That's some CC, and First Blood getting picked up by the mid laner.
Yep. Ended up pushing it out and getting there, and they used the fact that Move was level 6 and there's no flash on Yang, and that's something that you have to expect they would take advantage of. He spent just a little bit too long. You saw he backed up. He was like, I can't get away from this turret fast enough, so he has to hug it, and that was his death there. If he had just moved a second earlier, literally a second.
Talker's getting frisky though, goes in, does decent damage, is using the Ghost, wants to move forward. Gravity Field goes down, flash over, moves over the wall, coming over to shield. Talkers gets it. The 1v1 play coming in for the mid lane on INTZ. Move could be next.
Yeah.
Talkers. All right, he's got the ward. He's safe. He's safe.
Yeah, but that's a big win, though, when your mid laner is able to solo kill the other one. They both use their summoner spell, so that's going to be an advantage there for whichever jungler wants to visit it again. And they're going to push this out. They're going to take control of that side of the jungle, too.
And, of course, additionally made up for the CS differential while Victor roamed to the top side. So Orianna now just has a complete lead over the lane opponent.
And he's going to get this blue buff. So they're going to refresh his blue buff. It was just about over. And now if Victor doesn't get that, it's a big problem there because in lane, for mid laners, it's not always dealing damage to the other guy's HP bar. There's the concept of dealing damage to their mana bar. If you shield correctly, you spend a little bit of their mana to trade back and forth. Victor and Orianna both have to play that little dance here. So now Orianna gets to do that without any regard for her mana pool.
Exile going to get spotted out here in the jungle. We'll see that the Wolf Camp is taken, giving Move a little bit more knowledge. But, I mean, as you mentioned, Victor, of course, has the Hex Core upgrade, can clear these waves, but he's going to be forced into that tower at least as long as his blue buff is up and available.
And now he has to be very safe. And you can see which side of the map he's playing towards, the side that his jungler's on. And now Revolta has complete control of the top side. They're just going to go for a dive here.
Four-man, Macau's ready. They're going to have the curtain call. Oh, Exile, this is not what you want. He is doomed to fall. Is there any way he can outplay? He's making it over this wall. Is he going to be able to dodge it? Hilly's blocking it all. Are you kidding me? Exile is going to live. Hilly with the hero play may have to give his life. He's going to make it out too, and INTZ burn everything for nothing.
Absolutely perfect there. Now they're going to be able to push up the mid lane, though, from INTZ's side. If anybody stays around here, it's a low HP Tom Kedge, but it's also this full HP Move here. He's going to go for the kick.
He wants the hero play. Instant exhaust. Hylissang going to save the day. They're backing off. Jockster is so low.
Oh, that was so close.
I like immediately looked at Ezreal. I was like, we're gonna
it's down, unfortunately. But he got to push out the bottom wave. He got to have a good back for himself. Veritas now with a Sheen in a good spot, up in CS over the Jhin. And this is something that's been happening
Chachi earlier. Yang was the one looking for the solo kill, but Chachi, the Q flash input buffer, picks up the kill.
Yep. That's that mastery there because he's able to actually have a little bit lower cooldown on his flash. Yang's isn't up yet. Just barely.
I mean, chaining kills in the top lane. Chachi's always been a strong point for the Unicorns of Love lineup and really proving it here today. Move making his way to the top side. This tower may be set to fall. First brick could drop in the favor of Unicorns of Love.
Yeah, Vizichachi, he's up against Yang. Yang was the strongest member of the team for INTZ. He's the one that had those amazing Gnar ultimates at Worlds. And boom, right there, solo kill after getting a little bit of an advantage over Yang, who's looking to scale, not so much bully the lane.
Gangplank slowly working towards that Trinity Force, but in the meantime, Chachi's taking his time. Breaking down the tower. Excellent spot to be for the team overall. You can see almost a 2K gold lead in their favor, only 11 minutes in. And while the early moves coming in for the side of INTZ look so good, the proactive roams into mid lane, they just have not been able to get anything out of the side of that single kill in the mid lane for Talkers.
Yeah, and that's a solo kill too. That was not really a team effort at all. It wasn't even summoner spells blown previously by Exile. It's just that straight up 1v1. And Exile, he has had a habit of dying.
Exile is
solo.
not what you want. Moves forward, does get stunned up. Tick's going down. Hylissang on the way in. Exile trying to look pretty for the bait. Is he going to get it? Hylissang on the way in. Are they going to be able to deliver it? Ezreal goes wide. Unicorns of Love. They want that Orionic.
Oh yeah, they throw 4 people into the mid lane there. Revolta, and because there's no top turret, Yang just gets to free farm, and they don't want him to be able to freeze it forever. So they have to apply pressure somewhere else on the map. It's an Ocean Drake that's up right now, so it's not really the one that you would throw everybody at unless you're just trying to get a Drake.
Neither team with too much of an advantage on the bottom side either to try to take that one. Chachi will walk right past the pink ward. Just focusing on the creeps, not too worried about the vision there.
Yeah.
Maybe he missed it.
He also has enough protection on the top side of the map now, and that's why Move goes to the bottom side. And now back, kind of spread thin here for INTZ.
Blue ult goes to the wall. He's going to tag 2. Revolta's on the way in. Snare's going to hit Hylissang. Curtain call coming out. The chain of ults, but Move is not scared. Goes back in to get aggressive. Team blocking for each other. In comes Vizichachi. They're looking for a little bit more. Jockster on the front lines, potentially caught out. It's going to lead to Revolta for safety. Macau going for the cheeky crit here. Has to be careful. Snare finally going to connect. Looks like both teams are going to back off.
Vizichachi was literally 3 seconds away from his ultimate after he teleported, and so used the Q instead of the ultimate, and that's all he had for mana left. So unfortunate, but not able to capitalize on anything there. He blows his teleport, and that gives Yang free time in the top lane as a Gangplank. It's definitely not what you want.
Yeah, it will, of course, have the Trinity Force next time he has the opportunity to back as well. So close already is going to be a massive spike in his favor. But Move is going to take the opportunity on this bottom side of the map to move onto the ocean. And, of course, no sight available for INTZ. So a small boon in their favor despite committing so much on the bottom side.
So they'll pick that up for UOL side, but what Unicorns of Love have been doing now is they're actually picking apart the jungle, and they're trying to keep Revolta occupied. Move went for the blue buff, whereas simultaneously Vizichachi shoves in top. Olaf can only pick one. He can only try to defend his blue buff or go to the top side.
All alone, goes in, nice, uses the slow, looks for a little bit more, is just going to do Sonic Wave. Resonating Strike, simple pickup there for the Unicorns of Love.
Yep, Macau, no heal gonna be used there, and Jockster backed in. They're gonna try to get Vizichachi one
trying
away.
To get him out. Revolta's now looking for the 1v1. This may be a little aggressive, is gonna have to back away. Good use of the ultimate there to spare it. Revolta, perfect timing on the ult, but not the fight that he wanted.
Like I was saying, they're trying to attack Revolta's jungle here, trying to keep him occupied. They even took his Raptors away, and now he's on top side of the map against Chachi.
Chachi looking for the hero play is going on to Revolta. He wants the kill so bad. The barrel is there. Revolta gets it. One reckless swing. Pick up that kill.
That's that low HP Olaf. His damage just goes up. You think you have enough to take him out, but his just spikes so much.
I mean, Chachi getting over-aggressive there. We talked about him being such a strong member of the team, maybe a little too eager to carry the game in that exchange, but Gangplank 0-2-1 may not be an exciting scoreline, but still getting stronger and stronger as the game moves forward, and it only gets easier as he completes that Trinity Force.
Seeing how much gold he actually has. He's even in gold now, despite the kill going over to Vizichachi earlier. It's just that Gangplank passive from the parlay. He's staying up just a little bit here, but the big discrepancy is that bottom lane. Veritas, 1,000 gold up already, 30 CS easily over this Jhin, and that's a lot of just Macau, not last hitting properly, but also he's been leaving lane to try and get some W's onto the mid lane, some deadly flourishes for the roots, and they just haven't been landing.
Of course, Veritas a big question mark for the team as well, while Move was the one who's inconsistent. Veritas was never quite on par with the top-tier European AD carries, but he's doing very well against the likes of Macau in this lane matchup, and it looks like he has been able to improve a decent amount, at least in the laning phase, during his free time in the off-season.
Yeah, Veritas, he's bounced around a whole lot. OCE, an Egg Challenger, and NA Challenger. His biggest issue was always he didn't really have a support that he could synergize with. He was on a team where he was the most mechanically gifted player, and he would try and go for these hero plays because he had to, because his team wouldn't try and enable him or try to make anything else happen. So when there's so much on your shoulders, it's actually kind of hard to shine because you need advantages elsewhere or something to leverage instead of being the only person that can do stuff for your team. And now on UOL, they make a lot of cross-map plays. He's able to play the scaling game. He's able to get to the late game where his mechanics will shine. So Veritas is in a great place right now. And when he slotted into UOL, wasn't really any missteps.
Holding back on getting too excited about the 1v1. It looks like Yang is just going to be able to back away here, but a lot of trading on the top side. And you can see not quite as favorable for Poppy as it was earlier in the game, but Revolta's already burned the ghost.
Yeah, he's trying to get there so fast. They cleared out the pink ward. Vizichachi doesn't know.
Commit. He's just going to pick up what CS he can. May know that he's already done. Tries to knock out the Gangplank. Isn't going to get it. Tries to dash the creep to escape. One more shot. Ooh, Hillisang. All it's going to get canceled out here. Chachi's going to drop down. Hank picking it up with a pistol on the back half.
Yeah, it looks like Hillisang was a little bit too far forward. Got hit with a skill shot there. And because of the damage.
Chachi with the exhaust. May have overstayed his welcome. Veritas going to have to flash out, though. Macau does land the snare. No follow-up. But Hillisang and Move are here on the top side. Gangplank all goes in. Move looking for a little bit more. Yang goes back into the safety. Tongue Lash going to grab it. Revolta looking for a kill. Move is in trouble. Devour to try to keep him safe, but Revolta's just going to keep running him down. Red Buff misses the axe, and a double kill. Meanwhile, in the mid lane, we'll have to take a look at that one in a second, but Revolta not going to walk away with much of anything, and Veritas and Exile are breaking down the mid lane in the meantime.
Yeah, Jockster was already incredibly low, and so they just dive him.
Looking for the outplay, Revolta. You talked about the deceptive tankiness, but Tom Kench max health damage, and it's no problem for the big old catfish.
Deceptive tankiness, deceptive damage from Tom Kench all the time, then W just catches you off guard, but still, Revolta, he didn't really have anything he could do about that, and that's going to be the inside turret going down in the mid lane, and the second turret, a lot of damage is going to come in on this.
And this is a huge, huge move in the favor of the Unicorns of Love. 31.4K to 26.8. The Ocean Drake to back them up. All outer towers down, and they have control of the map.
Exactly. They have control of the jungle. They're going to take the blue buff away now. And that's the second time in a row that this blue buff has gone over to the Unicorns of Love. They just have control of this side of the map, and now they swap it up. Poppy, Vizichachi on the bottom side of the map. Dragon is up in 1 minute and 30 seconds, but also the Baron is around that time.
And of course, it's interesting to see how the posture changed. We'll take a look at that play in the mid lane. Exactly how this unfolded.
Yep, Jockster. Tries to save him. That doesn't work too well. Tries to block a Q there, but gets right in the Chaos Storm. Even blows his flash and the heal. Oh.
Man, playing against Victor, new Victor ult, it's just the most frustrating thing ever. You saw that, I like it, the hero play, tries to save him, but it's simply not enough. And it's interesting how the pace of this game has changed, because in the beginning it was Orianna dominating Victor in the laning phase, getting multiple blue buffs, shutting this guy down, but Exile completely unfazed. The team comes together to save him in some of those early plays, and now he's paying off dividends because he is so far ahead.
And when they have so many squishies and low mobility as well, like the Jhin and the Gangplank, Victor's such a good pick because the ultimate, the Chaos Storm, when you have the completed Hex core, it's faster, right? It gets extra movement speed. And then you get the Rylai's, which is the second item that's coming through here. Like, they can't actually escape that ultimate. There's no way. If Macau's in that ultimate, he's pretty much dead.
And of course, INTZ are not out of the game yet, but they have to play carefully. Cannot afford to commit unnecessary resources here. Do have the luxury of that Gangplank ult. They need to clear out some of these minion waves, but have to be careful. Ezreal already scaling up. Exile very far ahead, as we already talked about. And Poppy and Lee Sin, maybe not damaging powerhouses, but the potential for initiation is definitely there. Yang doing what he can to clear on the bottom side. These top laners following each other across the map, but it looks like we will see a play on the bottom side, committing for a little bit more. Revolta moving in, trying to get the kill. Block already used. Chachi knocks him to the wall. Gangplank ult is used. Veritas is untouched on the backside. That's going to be one kill. Maybe looking for a little bit more move. Getting aggressive is going to get snared up. Could be caught out. No, dodges out the ultimate, and Yang maybe overstaying his welcome here. Everyone is so low. Curtain call. Who is it going to connect on? Unicorns of Love. Brothers in arms blocking it out till the end.
They're behind the turret, and here comes Talkers. He doesn't have the ultimate, though. He's trying to clear out the way so that they take turret shots.
Not going to get it. Veritas, no move, moving forward. Has to be careful. Talker still wants a little bit more. They're moving in. Gets him. Chaos Storm to cut him down. Now Macau is the one caught out and left alone. It's a bloodbath on the bottom side.
Yeah, that looked like it was going to go very favorably for INTZ, but off on the side, Talkers had already used his Orianna Shockwave, a big game-changing ultimate there, and he was sectioned off by a W. Exile put down the W, made sure that he couldn't come through, and it made Talkers take a very long route to get to that fight. He was so late.
His own potential of the victor was immense in that fight and move. You know, very cocky in the initial stages, almost went down, but dodges out the Orianna ultimate, and we have to wonder if Talkers needed to hold on to that cooldown, but Unicorns of Love again come out on top in these small trades, and they're going to top it all off with this Cloud Drake.
Yep, second Drake going over to Unicorns of Love here. No way that it can actually get stolen over from INTZ. And INTZ now, they have to start worrying a little bit. This is a 6,000 gold lead for UOL. Sure, you might scale a bit, but this early game from UOL has gone surprisingly well. Uncharacteristically well, I would say. Move, highest skill participation on the team,
showing
cross-map kills.
I mean, interesting as well, of course, from Veritas. Massive CS lead in his favor. 50 in the lead right now. Well into his build path. The supportive scoreline, 0-0-6. One assist away from his own movie series. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's still the Exile story. 5-1-0 on this victor. Dead even in CS and has completed that Rylai's. And as you mentioned, now potentially unescapable in these teamfight scenarios.
Yeah, Macau is going to have to be very scared. He's level 10. He's 2 levels down. He hasn't gained a level in quite a while now, so I assume he's close.
Wants it. There's a Chachi. Realizes this is not the fight he wants. Poppy copters up.
Baton twirling for a little bit.
Just lets him know. I don't want to fight. I'm going to walk away. If you're going to walk away, I don't have to let go of this button.
Just make sure, keep your options safe.
Exile getting aggressive. Macau, not a whole lot of options left. One more tick. Now he's slowed up. In comes the Tom Kench. Insult to injury at this stage as they are going to be able to break down this tier 2. And INTZ look completely lost, not knowing at all where to put their resources. Revolta hungry for a fight here, but not one he can afford to take.
Yeah, that Victor ultimate, kind of how it goes there against the Jhin. So Exile, it makes you understand a little bit more of the Unicorns of Love draft and what they were going for here in that mid game. Is Exile able to 1v1, no problem, 100%.
Yeah, the split push Victor, maybe not something that we're used to seeing, but if you're going to put him up against the Jhin, he's going to have a really good time. Yang and Chachi still looking for the 1v1. Poppy not going to connect. Ult goes in, gets the heal mid-air. That was nice. Chachi now hungry for a little bit more. So much damage on the Gangplank.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to turn, though, because the shield there it is.
Gets him. He gets him.
Yeah, Flash throws the shield. Captain America, let's go.
Grasps the Undying. Gets a nice little heal proc. Got the Cloud Drake, too. Yeah. As well as the
Good point.
Just not going to get away from him. Talkers, I feel like every single member wants a fight, and Lee Sin's picking one in the mid lane, but it doesn't matter because the 80 carry now set to drop. Yomu's is going to be enough.
Dead.
Exile doesn't even care. There's a turret there, man. You're supposed to respect it.
No matter what, Macau, I mean, this guy's going to fall further and further behind. 60 CS down already, 2 levels down. It's going to get even worse from here. Can't catch these waves. Exile's going to push into the turret. It's just a disaster right now.
And it's interesting because in the qualifiers, though, goes in, maybe look for more. You talked about INTZ playing around Macau. Yeah. This time, they kind of left him on his own. Revolta spending a ton of time on the top side of the map, but really not working out for the team overall. 0-4-0, not the scoreline you want.
Revolta usually will go for the top side, his first or second gank. The only problem is that his first or second gank came out a little bit too late, and now we're looking at 23 minutes in, 24 minutes in. UOL already on the Baron, half HP. Gank does have an ultimate.
Only going to grow. Jocks are the only one in range. Revolta, that's an Olaf. That's not a Lee Sin. That's not an Elise. There is no way over that wall. Jockster goes for the hero steal, but it will be Unicorns of Love who secure the Baron. 24 minutes in. Well, I mean, what is left for INTZ here? This feels like an almost unstoppable Unicorns of Love.
Yeah, 10,000 gold lead at 24.5 minutes. Like Unicorns of Love right now, they've been playing their game from the beginning. They started with Vizicachi getting a flash trade, almost dying, but then they turned it around by getting moved to the top side, and Exile, even though he got solo killed, was able to shove up his lane with the Victor and use that power spike of having his Hex Core to the point where he could clear very quickly. And now move, face checking Revolta.
Yeah, definitely not where he wants to be. He's just going to hop away. Dodge is out. Oh, he's going to kick back. Nice sidestep. Maybe unintentional, but dodges. Deadly flourish there. Hellsec moving forward. Gangplank ult is down. No one is committing any other abilities. Keep your eyes on Chachi. He goes in, move and Exile. They get picked up. The gravity field is ticking down, looking to hit more members of the team. They're trying to leap to safety. Move is so low, but he's hungry for more. Yang is the only one on the backside of the map. He wants to kill Exile. It's not going to happen. The mid laner goes godlike. Oh, up goes Macau, now set to fall down. The whole team is piling on, and there are no options left for INTZ. Unicorns of Love, you cannot sate their lust for blood. They want more. They want more kills. They want to close in fashion as they cut down every member. The legendary mid laner on the side of Unicorns of Love, and the inhibitor finally going to fall. They may move to close the game.
And Vizicachi just dove 2 turrets. He doesn't give a damn about these turrets anymore. Full armor build, Guardian Angel. They're going to try to end the game right here. And 26 minutes. Very, very convincing from Unicorns.
18-4, a massive gold lead. Talkers goes in for a little bit more, but at the end of the day, a very clean first game coming in for the Unicorns of Love, and a masterful performance.
People are saying the Unicorns coming in definitely favorites for this matchup against INTZ, but that type of domination,
it's not something you expect. I mean, Victor 9-1-0. We looked at him 3 minutes ago and he got a Rylai's. 1, maybe 2 minutes later, he has a Lich Bane. This man is a monster. This is the solo queue nightmare you never wanted to witness. But at the end of the day, Unicorns of Love just absolutely killing it.
They basically made Macau a walking bag of gold, and not even a fast walking bag of gold at that, because every time he was out, just pick him up, get that kill. You know, you look at the damage in this game, though, Yang ended up doing the most damage in the game. So, you know, Gangplank's still actually working out for them, but they weren't able to get it going. They weren't able to get anything going on the side of INTZ.
And of course, we had plenty of opportunities to talk about the way that game unfolded, but you've heard enough from us. Let's hear what the Xfinity Analyst Desk has to say.
Thank you very much, guys. Indeed, welcome back to the Xfinity Analyst Desk, where we have our first game to break down. That was a convincing win from the side of the Unicorns of Love. Some jitters maybe in the beginning, but they really got it together. Let's start by going lane by lane, possibly starting in that bottom lane, because there was a lot of focus from both junglers there in the beginning. What did you guys make of that?
Okay, so we quickly have to kind of touch on the draft phase before we go into bottom lane, because it was a priority pick into that Tahm Kench as well as a first ban Karma. And the fact that INTZ's answer was that Braum and didn't punish the Kench. Typically, when you first pick Tahm Kench, you're going to get punished. Take a range support. Nami was available. She could have been an option. So either if that's scouting, if that's confidence, they weren't punished. And a lane that normally should fall behind if they don't get control level 1 was able to survive it. And in fact, bullied Macau and Jockster around quite significantly, which led them to winning both bottom and top side of the map.
And I feel like that might just be lack of faith in Macau. I mean, he was getting caught out left, right, and center. There was no synergy with Jhin roaming towards mid lane. That it's a difficult position if you don't really trust your AD carry to put him in a position where you just have to win the bottom lane with a Nami pick, and that's just the scouting, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and it started at level 1, you know, when Olaf, Revolta, and Jhin and Braum were all in there level 1, you know, trying to scout that out, making sure that they had positioning on the level 1, but Unicorns of Love just ahead of INTZ at pretty much every single step, making sure that they weren't put down and making sure that they got those significant trades.
And I have to echo your points, just because you have to pay a price in the way League of Legends works now. If you're going to first pick Tahm Kench, there has to be a pressure lane present for the enemy team, because they're showing a support that does have laning weaknesses. Instead, they got the free pass. They even won the lane with what should usually be a bad 2v2 situation, and that kind of flowed over to the other lanes, and what caused the really fast snowball in this game.
Yeah, and that's where the stampede began, from the Unicorns in the top side with the GP in the Poppy matchup. We spoke about earlier, you mentioned that GP has a great laning phase into the Poppy, and the way that works is basically GP
on an island.
Yeah, on an island, GP just keeps shooting Poppy, gets a little bit of gold, and you're able to build up an advantage that way. CS, because of your passive.
The CS numbers were good. It's just the level 6, though. That's the break.
That's where the danger happens, because we saw earlier Gangplank almost killed Poppy. She had to flash away. But once that happened, Poppy hits level 6. Lee Sin, that's the crucial point here because Lee Sin has so much damage with his Dragon's Rage, with the Resonating Strike execute, that they just dove him, immediately was able to set him up for taking that first brick, and then it was game over for the Poppy.
And the analogy I'll give is think about top lane Ryze when that was a thing. It was always like, this guy can farm up, but gank him under his turret with CC, and you'll be really happy. Stop the scaling from happening. Same story with Gangplank, and Unicorns of Love definitely had the memo when it came to top lane.
And I would take a look at that again, where the flashes were down and the Unicorns of Love capitalized. Even Victor came to play, but it wasn't really necessary.
Yeah, it was a 3-man just to make sure, but this
This is just...
And this was the one point where INTZ were looking really good, because Taka's aggression here, flashing into no vision, put down the ward just earlier, solo kill onto Exile in a 1v2 even. That was when we were getting excited about INTZ, but they had to do something about this top lane, because it just kept getting worse.
I was going to say, speaking of 1v1 kills, Visachachi then evens up the score after the dive, and speaking of dives...
I mean, Move was really on point here. We didn't really talk about Move much during the pregame, but he was kind of the oscillating factor. Move has a good game, Move has a terrible game. This was one of those good games we're just seeing more and more during the regional qualifiers. They had the right lane assignments, they were scrappy, but Move was in the right spot, and it really opened up Exile after a weak early laning phase, as we saw, to just take over the game.
I was a little worried at first when we saw the invade from INTZ into the red side of the map, where you just completely lost. But Exile here, once he got going, once nobody had summoners, he was just able to pop off, especially once the Rylus got completed. We're not seeing it here, but he was so dominating.
But the fact that they're able to even pick up those 2 solo kills while another skirmish is happening on the top side of the map, just across the map, communication was breaking down for INTZ.
And you see that, it's comical, right? A 1v2 just killing the support and AD carry as they walk to mid, but why did it happen? Like, if you really parse what happened, it was, okay, the Gangplank should be ahead, he's not. We need to gank top. The top gank goes poorly, then the mid, the AD and support like, okay, we'll roam to cover mid. Do it a bit too aggressively, given how far behind they are. A double kill. And that's just absolutely having your cake and eating it too for the Unicorns of Love.
That you beg the question of what set this up or why did it happen, because there are such small little intimate things, and we talked about Revolta's pathing. When you look back to the gank that started this snowball up into the top side, Revolta right before then invaded on the bottom side red buff, and he delayed his back timer. He went from invade red into passing over the blue because the second rotation of blue buff had happened, and then he backed right then and there. Move had vision, knew that they were on the bottom side of the map taking that blue, knew that he had the time to go up to the top side and set up that gank for 3 people dive. Like, it's these little efficient pathing things that cause and put Revolta into trouble because he overstays on the map too long.
And I think that really speaks to the struggles of a team and really drafting compositions where people have different ideas. When you're playing the Olaf, you want to be the carry. You want to make sure that you're a farm, that you can snowball the game. When you pair that with the Gangplank, all of a sudden you have to give away some of those resources to protect the Gangplank, to make sure that he doesn't get doped. So then you have 2 champions with conflicting ideas that the goal just isn't there. And as a player, you just don't really want to help somebody else when you know that you will be doing well with the resources. And then you see the play that you mentioned, dive top, game snowballed.
And now, you know, INTZ are already at match point for their IEM Oakland kind of a visit here. And that's kind of the worrying thing for them, is that like, you can't really take much. This is definitely one of those games where the coach like, all right, ignore that, just assume that you're back. It's a best of 1 now, because they need to, because they were just absolutely annihilated by the Unicorns of Love.
I'm going to hijack Shark's desk here for a second, though, because I know that Papa Smithy and I were pretty strong on the Unicorns of Love coming in as favorites to this tournament. Crumbs, you stood by TSM, you stood by your North American roots.
It's one game. It's one game.
That's a 26-minute stampede.
Yes, thank you for using that.
I got you. Oh, change your mind?
You want to retort? No. How do you think that you underestimated the Unicorns of Love a bit, or how much can you read into this?
I thought that was great, but I do think that INTZ just definitely did not put up any fight whatsoever.
I mean, they capitulated, right?
They had good ideas with some invades, with the draft. It made some sense, right? There's semblance of good cohesion there, but honestly, the way that they broke down.
And a 26-minute stomp. It looks like there are a bit too many problems to fix within this, well, a couple of minutes they have now to regroup and get back into it, knowing that if they lose here, they are out of the tournament.
Well, Yeah, go ahead.
And it's not even just the cohesion, because you hit like a very good point that, you know, the composition had kind of different identities, different players wanted to do different things. But even when they were trying to answer in that mid lane, that initial mid lane gank when they tried to break the tower, the fact that they didn't lead with the Jhin ultimate, that Olaf's axe miss, that the Gangplank ultimate was misplaced, and then Hylissang just shows up and he's like, I've saved Victor's life and I've completely turned this around. It's just so many execution errors stacking back to back to back for INTZ.
Yeah, we'll see if they can get that confidence back in the break. We will be taking a quick break, as well as Unicorns of Love take a commanding lead in this series and in this quarterfinal. We'll be back right after this.